You know, we've been trying to make improvements in the paradigm of the state trust. In 1995, when I was sent over to the legislature to work on the API, it was because Governor Symington at that time recognized that the trust land, you know, there was an opportunity there. But as I think most people in this room know, in order to do anything substantially different with the trust, it requires a change in the state constitution and also a change in the state enabling, or the Federal Enabling Act that created the state of Arizona. And so that's been the impediment. We've taken it to the ballot a number of times, trying to create the ability for the state land department to engage in conservation. And the voters have never approved it. I think it's largely because the language always ends up being very complicated because it's very technical, the changes that need to be made. But you know what? That doesn't mean that it shouldn't be attempted again. And I think that it will be resurrected. And I think that that's really what it's going to take. It's going to take a change, some additional changes in the Constitution. It may have to be done piecemeal. And then some changes in the Enabling Act. But right now, just the way the law is, it's pretty clear that other than buying it, and that's why we defaulted to the Arizona Preserve Initiative, is because absent the actual acquisition through purchase or lease, it's really not possible to do much with the state trust land. But I say that's what this room is for. Right. You know, we got to do state trust land reform again.
And the other impediment is what Pat talked about earlier in terms of voting. When you look at the percentage of voters that are out there, and you are the disciples, you're the ambassadors, and really more than anything, if you want citizen-driven action on those citizen-driven goals of the AWW, it has to be us. It can't, the leadership has to be from the ground up. It just always does, always will be, and maybe the future will be with the children as they become more politically active. Another,
I would just one other comment,
yeah,
if I may. Another impediment too with state trust land is for us scientists, it is extremely difficult to do research because the cost of permitting is exorbitant. For example, it would cost me about $2,000 for one project by one person. And so when you can't do research, that feeds into the misinformation or lack of information, which does affect education and of course does affect appropriate stewardship too. So it's quite frustrating for us scientists when we see the ease in people hunting or, you know, with grazing or driving, you know, off-road vehicles and very nominal fee, and us as researchers have to pay such an exorbitant amount that, and it's not just for plants, it's for every element of research, that we can't do it.
question over to the side.
Yes, thank you. I guess this is okay. I can talk pretty loud. It is on?
Yes.
Okay. As a follow-up to the gentleman prior, I am Executive Director of the Superstition Area Land Trust, and Maria, as you probably know, our priority conservation lands are all state trust land. So I have an interesting question for the panelists, and maybe Maria in particular. And do you think it would be possible to convert state trust land by executive order into national monument?
Simple question.
Yes or no?
I'm actually trying to think whether that question's ever been asked and answered, you know, at least in an Attorney General's opinion. I think it would be, I mean, there's federal laws that have granted the land to the state of Arizona. So I think that those grants are in law. And so I don't think that an executive order could ever trump those laws. I think you have to go back through and change the federal laws in order to do that. That's what I think the case is. But it's good to know that Salt's in the room. Liz, let's see, Anne, is she still? Yeah. Say hello to her for me.
Very
So
good
I
question.
think it requires a legal change. And anybody, others may opine differently.
Just ASU plug, the Sandra Day O'Connor School of Law is coming downtown Phoenix. And their strength in environmental law is getting more so, and working with our school. I think these are the kinds of case studies and public fora that we can look at just to really dig down into those details to find out if, in fact, this can be done, and if so, how it best could be done. So that's a great question, and we will definitely keep that in. So thank you.
I would mention, too, that the Sonoran Institute is still very engaged in state trust reform, state land trust reform. So maybe check out the Sonoran Institute and their website and what's going on over there.
Very good.
We have one right here. Hold on just a moment.
Hello. I'm here from Tempe with several other citizens today, and we're in the process just beginning to ask the city of Tempe to make a preserve out of the remaining Sonoran Desert in Papago Park. Papago Park, 2/3 of it belongs to Phoenix and 1/3 belongs to Tempe. Recently, our general plan 2040, unbeknownst to us, they put in there that a small section of the Rolling Hills Golf Course, which is in Papago Park, that it could be rezoned commercial. I asked them to put a hotel, actually. I asked them how could they do that, and they gave me the FDR document, the patent from 1932, saying that Tempe got some of the property for different uses. I did not interpret it that they could make it commercial, and asked the city, how do you interpret that document? Which we never did get a legal definition from them. They had been working on that project for about 2 years. We had noticed it about, 5 months before we finally met with the city, that it was being discussed in executive sessions. We have, that program has been stopped right now, the hotel. However, that little blip in the general plan is still there. And I think there's other interest in Papago Park at the Rolling Hills Golf Course. Statements have been made that the land is disturbed. So we are in the process of the rest of the desert is to actually having Tempe make a preserve out of it, maybe then end up taking it to the voters. But we're all in Papago Park right now. And I don't think the Phoenix side is protected either. The golf course keeps growing, the National Guard keeps growing. Everybody keeps taking Papago Park. So I would ask for your help and support as we move forward, and what you think can be done to help save the Sonoran Desert in Papago Park outside of this wonderful garden.
I can comment unless anyone else would like to take that area. As many people here in this room know, that for many years I was the director of Phoenix's Parks and Recreation Department, and of course working with Maxine and Ruth and what we call the matriarchs of the mountains that really were the ones that back in the late 60s and early 70s started what you're talking about in Tempe, and that is voter-driven initiatives to create a preserve system that cannot be sold or leased without voter approval. And it went to the voter ballot box because of some development proposed deals that took place at South Mountain, as well as at the Point Tapatio area. And people like Maxine were rampant, and those voters came, and so what you just talked about could happen to Papago can't happen to Papago. The golf course is the same size today it was when I came 35 years ago. It's a better golf course now than it was about 15 years ago, but it can't grow. So I think in terms of what you're doing as citizens to put the pressure on your city council to be able to, from public access, show the information so that it's transparent, you can see it, and then work through the council representatives that are pro-preserve, and you have a couple that I know of personally on the Tempe City Council that are very open space oriented. Keep working, keep plugging that, and then ask for good mentoring from Maxine Lakin and her friends and how they did it in Phoenix. Sure.
as I drive around the valley, I'm noticing more and more how development is going farther and farther up the mountains, whether that's out towards the McDowell Sonoran Conservancy area or wherever it is. And I guess I'm just really surprised by that, and I was wondering if anybody could speak to that. Why is that happening? I thought we'd preserve some of these lands, whether it be in the parks or the trusts or whatever, but it seems like they keep making the high-end homes going up those hills more and more and more. And every time I drive around the county, I mean, I was out on the Master Gardener tour last Saturday, and I mean, everything is going up higher and higher and higher up onto these mountains. And I'm just wondering, how does this get to happen?
Anyone want to comment? I don't want to be the sole
Environmental
determiner here.
sensitive land ordinances.
Well,
It's-
Yeah, there were some attempts to, I know in the city of Scottsdale in the past, to create some ordinance protections that would prevent that from happening. Those ended up, going to the Arizona Supreme Court, and ordinances got struck down as illegal, which was really the motivation of the preserve effort in the city of Scottsdale starting in the early 90s to say, okay, we got to do something about this. So to the extent that there's any lands that are currently available and are being built on in the area immediately around the McDowells, it's really lands that were already in private ownership prior to the city kind of coming together and putting their act together and getting that preserve done, because the preserve through the mountains has completely bought all the land and it's protected under the city parks. So I don't think that you're going to see any additional growth, certainly in the Scottsdale, going up those hills any more than is currently happening. In the other cities, I can't speak, or in the county, I can't say.
And Phoenix, Ken Bonisher, Deputy Director, 15% grade, is that the ordinance? So, is it 15%? So nothing above the 15% grade level can be? Okay.
I think it is at this point appropriate to mention that we have so much open space that we assume a lot more of it is protected than really is. So, and I learned that especially around Daisy Mountain, like people think Daisy Mountain is protected, but it's not. So we might have the impression that that's land that's been set aside when in fact it is under private ownership or a state trust land or is something else.
On the voter turnout relationship, how many of you have been a part of voter initiatives to either protect or increase your various public lands? What were the percentages of those winning votes? Well, I know when the Phoenix Parks Preserve Initiative was passed, that was 82% support. I've heard other...
Scottsdale was a very high percentage as well, too.
As Pat said, once you get the voters aware to understand what these initiatives are, they turn out in big numbers and pass these initiatives. RJ at his County Park Commission meeting just the other day had a representative from the Trust for Public Land there to talk about financing as third-party land trust groups that could create a financing mechanism, because Maricopa County in and of itself is not in a financial capacity to float its own bonds. So the Trust for Public Land is able to come in and help communities, counties and states throughout the country. Maria did that when she was in her earlier years. So I think those kinds of groups, the Nature Conservancy, others, are in positions to try to help, support, and also do lobbying work. I don't mean that in the political sense, but just grassroots support work to get positive votes. And so take advantage of those groups.
I'd like to just say that the last time Arizona's voter turnout actually exceeded the national average was in a midterm, the 2010 midterm. And that's because there wasn't just one issue that was a hot issue, there were about three. And they brought out different stakeholder groups. Certainly SB 1070 was on the ballot. The 1 cent sales tax increase for education was on the ballot. That's when it was first put into law. So we had, I think, first things first, was it first things first? I think it was in 2000, I can't remember. But so you're getting different constituents who felt very passionate about something, so voter turnout was higher than the national average. the national average isn't great, okay? I think the issue that we've heard two things. First of all, I have never talked to just an ordinary voter who understands state trust lands. I've never talked to a single person. The legislation, and sometimes you have competing legislations, I think you have a challenge in that, first of all, they have to feel passionate about something. And second, they have to understand what you're asking them to do. If they're confused, they'll vote no. I can promise you, every time they'll vote no. Because honest people do that. They don't want to make a mistake, you know?
Especially in the Constitution.
Yeah. So I think you've got a couple of issues going here. What I was going to say is I can just sit here listening to you guys, and it's just like I'm looking at the Gallup data on how important land and aesthetics and parks and hiking trails are to people here. So you have the issue. People are not going to be motivated because you say, oh, we've got to get our voter turnout up. It doesn't do it. They have to feel passionate about something, and you have an incredible topic that people feel very passionate about. If I could think of one topic that would actually engage millennials probably easier than any other, because they're not voting now, it would be hiking trails, outdoors, because they're not interested in golf. They're just not. They don't want to move to a golf community. They want to live someplace where they're outdoors, they can hike, they can bike, they can do all the kind of things that this generation is interested in. So I loved what I was hearing about the McDowell project because it sounded so not prescriptive. You know, if people who just feel passionate about something coming and really getting engaged with it, and Maria, you made the perfect comment. You have to have a distinctive place. We already have a distinctive place. We just need to make more of it. So,
Let's take this question, or are you over here? I'm sorry.
look at first.
Go ahead.
Well, this will be on a new track, but this weekend is a great stargazing weekend, and I hope you'll all go outside and enjoy it. The question I have for the group is, as we look across the country, we see that the night sky has disappeared from a lot of the nation. And yet in Arizona, we still have this as a great resource, not just for astronomers, but for our wildlife and our plants, and just part of our environment. So I'd like to see if some of you can tell us how you made a connection to the night sky. Was it a star party at a county park, or is there another link that you have with the night sky? And I'm wondering if we can ask Wendy to start. I know there's a lot of connections you
Thanks,
can make, today especially, and this weekend. But more importantly, maybe the link between the queen of the night sky.
Yes, we talked a little earlier about this too. And I almost had included this in my presentation on the Arizona Queen of the Night. And there are some amazing plants that do put all their energy into flowering at night. And one of them is the Arizona Queen of the Night. And it's only for a short time, too. And that's when the pollinators, the hawk moths come and visit it. And it's just this little ecosystem going on at a very brief time in the summer, in June, generally. And this little stick that looks like it's dead can develop into one of the most amazing flowers with one of the most amazing fragrances as well. As a matter of fact, some guy from back east came out here he wanted to literally bottle it up and try to make a perfume out of it. And that is one of my connections with night sky. And there are so many other plants too. Have you ever seen a datura, sacred datura, open up at night? It pops. It makes an audible pop when it opens. And it just, blooms into this really, really wonderful, again, fragrant hawk moths coming at it. So,
I'll put in a shameless plug for our county park system here. We have programs, stargazing programs that we offer, and we have professional astronomers come out, set up telescopes, and for me, and the connection with the night sky, for me, it's not so much viewing the stars as it is the astronomer telling the history of how the stars were named, and that was really something for me that was very interesting, very exciting. But we will have 240, 250 people show up to a stargazing program and just be fascinated with it. And just to let you know, the latest park master plan that we updated was the White Tank Park Master Plan, and we included night skies in there as a component of that plan. Sir?
Yeah, the question I had was, what ideas do you have for protecting the preserves from us? And by that I mean the recreationists that go out there and hike in the preserves and then decide we want to go up to the top of this beautiful little peak that's nearby where there is no trail, and before long there gets to be more trails than you can count. I know in the Phoenix Mountain Preserves, it's just unbelievably different than it was 20 or 30 years ago in terms of the number of social trails. And it doesn't seem like, it seems like the closer the area is to population centers, the more it gets hammered. If you go to South Mountain, east end of South Mountain, or if you go up around Paistoa Peak, Trinity Draw, the Paistoa Peak trailhead, the areas are being just literally loved to death with very little maintenance that goes on. So what ideas do you have in terms of controlling users and coming up with money that actually helps to reconstruct a lot of these things? Because the McDowell Mountains, fantastic, unbelievable trail system, they haven't yet experienced the numbers that the Phoenix Mountain Preserves experiences.
I'd like to address that first, if I may. There's so many layers to that. Part of it is the educational component. It's not just educating the users, but it's educating everybody, including park folks, and because again, from when someone learns about something with like detours or something, and people really do appreciate it more, and they will care for it more and be better stewards. Another major layer, though, is of course the funding, and so that's why when we talk about it's got to be commitment on all levels, and so you've got to commit to the funding too, because when you go out, they're so understaffed. And we don't have enough people patrolling and making sure people stay on, the paths and all, not creating all these other, and as well as the landowners who do choose, who have this wonderful opportunity to live adjacent to preserves. I've seen so many spider trails from people's houses into the preserve, and that affects it. So education is so key, but you got to get that whole buy-in of everybody, and so that, and you as the public too, get the city, get legislators to, this is important. We need funding. We need funding to take better care of our preserves, not to mention expansion, but take care of what we got.
I would like to put a plug in here, though, too. I think that there is potentially a role for a robust volunteer program to address some of these. We don't have the funding for enough patrol, but what if you have a lot of volunteers who are invested, who are willing to do that patrol for you? We don't have the funding necessarily to pay someone to restore the natural areas and some of the spider trails, but what if we had enough volunteers who understood how to do that, guided by scientists who knew how to do that, who are willing to take that in effect. It's not the answer, obviously, to everything, but I think if we're creative, there's a lot more that we could do that we are currently not doing.
I think one of the best examples of your challenge and the priority that we have is the Appalachian Trail up and down the East Coast. If you went to that trail 20 years ago, it was a deteriorated mess. And through all those jurisdictions, going up and down as one of the national parks, you go there now and it's vastly improved. And it's because of citizen advocacy that has really impressed upon not only the federal government, but the state governments and the local governments that all own part of that Appalachian Trail to make it safe again. And it's going to be citizen advocacy, whether it's volunteer, whether it's elected leadership, that says we are not going to allow these trails to do exactly what you said, because in the long term, we all lose from that relationship. So it has to be a concerted effort on all of these levels that Wendy just mentioned.
And if I can follow up, Dale, it has to be a comprehensive effort, too. It has to be the volunteers working with law enforcement, the government entity making that a priority, so there is some law enforcement out there if volunteers can't do it. It is designing and constructing trails appropriately so that they handle the amount of use that they're going to get. It is also doing the citizen science and the science projects out there so we better understand what is the carrying capacity of a resource. Once we've understood that carrying capacity, then we can start to take measures, whatever they may be, through limited parking, through, as some people may not want to hear it, but actually charging fees, so you start to limit numbers. So it's really got to be a comprehensive approach to it.
Gia?
We did a study for the Forest Service a few years ago, and we asked them questions. We asked the users, the recreation users, some questions. One of the things, they didn't want to see the law enforcement. So they don't want to see any law enforcement when they go to open space because that's what they want to avoid. And I think the volunteers role could be very important here. Instead of having more law enforcement, use volunteers and citizens to educate them. That's one thing. The other thing is, no matter what we do, the population will grow. We have more demand of natural resources in our parks and preserves. So I think the better planning could help. And if you can plan, what would be the park like in 20 years from now, so that we can build trails and maintain those trails so that, we're not going to overuse them. Third piece is human behavior. If I go for hiking and I see somebody doing something bad things, there would be a lot of people follow that person. So I think if we can control when somebody is making mistakes in the beginning, we can stop happening again.
Any other comments, questions?
I think there's a role to be played too in trying to shift use patterns. So we know that Piestewa and Camelback get hammered constantly through the season. There's many rescues, lots of dollars output just in those two spaces. And if we could somehow conceive of a way to offer alternatives to those spaces that are similar experiences and not too far away, but communicating with the resorts and the tourist magazines and things like that, there you can work it in it from a different direction too.
Regional cooperation. It's not just eco-regional planning, but it's eco-regional communication, and it's figuring out what strengths are where and how we can share those strengths. And I think that that partnership sort of thing that the Conservation Alliance is trying to do is really critical to success in the future.
Believe it or not, the next generation will use our parks less than we do. So probably some of us will be happy because there will be fewer users to use our parks, but that's not good news because less people using parks means less stewardship. So I think we should find ways to encourage our kids to participate in parks. I think President Obama announced recently all fourth graders and their parents will have free access to public federal lands. I think that's really good news, and maybe some other public agencies, state agencies, counties, and cities that can offer similar things for youth as well.
Okay.
I'd like to, continue to provide good science. What I can offer for the Alliance and doing and encouraging outreach activities involving citizen science, because I really do believe, when you get people excited about things, they tend to care about them and be better stewards. And so not just with the Alliance, but throughout Arizona with different outreach projects that we have going and what we have planned to do too. So working closely.
Couple of things, and part of it is following up on what Mike talked about with the eco-regional thing. I'm very excited about the White Tank Mountain Conservancy. Who knows where it will go, but the opportunity to take 30,000 acres of county park property, 8,000 acres of Buckeye, the city of Buckeye, which will be a new park, and then trying to figure out what we do with all this other privately held land within that 75,000 acre mountain range, and working with state trust land and all of that, and trying to work it through, and taking the models that Mike has put together and really expanding that further. I'm very excited about that. And then I'm also excited about the potential of 70,000 acre park out near Wickenburg, and I want to work hard to have that happen before my career is ended.
Well,
in one way or the other.
If you find gold in the
Yes.
vulture mine again, I think you're going to be well on your way.
No, that stays with the federal government, so we can't.
The center, and I know Laddie, and the Arizona We Want Institute, and we do have a new director for the first time, Darcy Renfro, who has come to us very experienced. Our greatest challenge right now is trying to identify organizations and alliances like the Conservation Alliance that have something that really connects people to place and connects them to one another. The challenge is then how you build on that to where they're not just passionate about hiking or passionate about the preserves, but they actually become advocates for Arizona. And so our goal over the next, and believe me, Darcy will be following up with you. Our goal is definitely to find, I just said to Maria, look at what happened in downtown Phoenix. This is another example of how you build distinctive place. The minute Phil Gordon and Michael Crow and the other two universities decided to build ASU downtown in the biomedical campus. It has transformed downtown. 15,000 young people live down there now. First Fridays is the largest art walk in the nation. It connects young people to place, just like the mountain preserves do. And so I really, really know how much Laddie and Darcy and I will all look forward to trying to explore how we might be of help.
So my one idea is kind of simple. Go out and buy a crate of Last Child in the Woods and hand it to every mother that has little kids that hasn't read it. Just ask her, plead with her, read it. Because I think really cultivating that philosophy, that awareness that is contained on those pages is really one of the great hopes for our future.
Absolutely. Well, listen, ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you for being a part of this. I'd like you all to thank our panelists for such a great work that they did. I'd also, again, like to extend our appreciation to Desert Botanical Gardens, to Kim, to Stacy, to Ken, to all of your staff for allowing us to invade Dorrance Hall this evening to be able to do it. And please stay in touch. Somehow we were able to connect with you. You need to keep the ball rolling with us. So again, thank you all very, very much.
Thank you, Dale.